Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the April meeting of the Staten Island Borough Board to order. If we could all please rise and say the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
Thank you, Jerry.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll take note that we have members from all community board offices, and it looks like we're waiting on someone from Councilmember Hanks, but we do have Councilmember Karen Borelli joining us.
I'm here as well from Councilmember Hanks.
There you are. Who just popped up on my screen. Hi, Antoine. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Let me amend that and say all members are present. I did send out the minutes from last month's budget hearings. Sorry, they were a bit lengthy. Could I entertain a motion to accept the minutes, please?
motion to accept.
Sorry, Elena first,
Second.
and then Jerry. Great, thank you very much. And with that, we have two presentations this afternoon. First will be city planning, and then after that, the independent budget office. So for city planning, the floor is yours. If you'd like me to make you a presenter, please let me know.
Yes, please do. I can share my screen for some slides we've brought along.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to dill that deck of slides.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Nick Stampar. I'm an analyst here at City Planning on our planning support team. We are the team that, amongst other responsibilities, are in charge of shepherding the community district needs process. And so today I'm joined by my colleague Tashina, another analyst on our team, and we've got a short presentation as part of our suite of spring roadshows where we go around to agencies and community boards alike, our stakeholders and partners in this process, to talk about things we've been learning and working on from the previous year of submissions. So can everyone see my screen all right before I start talking about things, in case, just in case?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so jumping in, our presentation today is split into these four sections. I'm going to start by briefly talking about some table setting, some of the things that we've heard from a lot of our community board partners throughout the last year, and how it relates to our efforts as pursuing process improvements here in the CD needs process. Tashina will talk to us about some of the resources we've made available for community boards, as well as the ongoing work that we've got going on right now, and some things to look forward to in this next submission cycle. And then I'll open for a bit of Q&A and discussion on some of these points that we're hoping to improve upon as we move on to the next year of submissions. So feedback and process improvement. Feedback is incredibly important for us from both our community board and agency partners. I've included a few high-level things here that we often hear from a lot of our community board partners about pain points related to this process. And so these are things that I hope that we understand these issues correctly, that we're hearing from everyone. Top line item, obviously, we hear from a lot of boards that the responses they get from agencies through the community district needs process often vary pretty widely in how helpful they feel. Some feel indirect, or they don't exactly answer the questions that the boards are bringing up. We've also heard from a lot of boards as of late that the requests that you're asked to prioritize are often so varied that it's difficult to come up with one priority list. How does one choose between what's more important between issues like affordable housing or education and youth issues, as well as that district needs statements themselves, the actual reports we produce, can sometimes look and feel a bit dry or bureaucratic and could be more personalized. And so these are some things that will come up again later as we get towards our Q&A and discussion, but major things that we've been hearing lately that we're hoping to, as we move into this next submission cycle, really work on improving for you all in your experience with this process. To get to solutions related to these issues is going to require continued work and collaboration with all of the folks that are involved here. So on the community board side, we are obviously super grateful that our community board partners have been really great collaborators in this so far. We get a lot of great interaction and engagement from community boards and district managers across the city, including here in Staten Island, to work with us on ways that we can improve the process and ways that you all can improve your submission process every year. On our side of things, we obviously want to continue to increase and scale up the ways that we're able to support you all. As well as connect you with agencies that you might need to have follow-up conversations with to keep the ball rolling on certain budget priorities. And then as far as OMB and other agencies are concerned, obviously they'll continue to work with us on what other levers can we pull, what other gears can we sort of tweak to make sure that process improvements related to CD needs and the outcomes that you all hope to see from this process continue to move along and hopefully strengthen and get better. So these are the sorts of things that we've been hearing and the sorts of things that we want to, keep moving forward all sort of together in one direction, and that we're hoping to get some additional feedback from you all on today. So I'm going to hand off to Tash right now, who's going to summarize some of the things that we've got going on right now before we wrap up with those questions and discussion. So Tash, take it away.
Hi, good day. Thank you for having us here today. We have continued to expand the resources made available to boards to aid in the submission process. DCP has resources which we can offer to the boards. These include data resources, gathering public input, such as online CD needs public surveys, which are available in 10 designated citywide languages. We have printed materials such as CD needs flyer templates, tons of public available analysis, including budget requests, walkthroughs, in addition, training and tech support. Training is on the new CD Needs website. Our team is available for live submission support anytime upon request. We just want to allude to the fact that these support resources are things we continue to work on expanding. So hopefully they will continue to grow and improve to meet the needs of our community boards. In addition to scaling up boards resources, we have some new things that we are currently working on and is underway for fiscal year 2026. We want to let you know the work we are doing. We're transitioning to a new and improved submission website, which I will talk about shortly. We have done 2 months of feedback gathering with community boards, and I would like to thank all community board members who attend the feedback gathering session in December and January. We gained valuable input during these sessions. We are currently hosting our annual CD Needs Spring Roadshow to present to agencies on past fiscal year 2025 CD Needs submission cycle. It is going well. We are reporting out on data and trends specific to each agency, sharing best practice guidances and reviewing agency community board budget request data. Next slide. Thanks. FY 2026 submission cycle. As I mentioned earlier, we have transitioned to a new submission website. It is called Alchema. Planning support has scheduled over 17 hours of feedback session, and we got a lot of great feedback from district managers over the last several months that has helped us develop new features to make this a user-friendly experience for everyone. We are running weekly trainings right now through the end of June. Please, it is strongly recommended that district managers and staff who might work on the annual CD Needs submission join a training session to get familiar with the platform. Next slide. First and foremost, I'd like to extend gratitude to you and your board for the hard work that goes into these submissions. Your participation is invaluable. We want to maintain that we very much appreciate your commitment to this process and let the community board members, district managers know that DCP supports the annual submission and collection and reporting out of the CD agency partners on the community board budget requests. While we acknowledge that the annual deadline for the completion of the submission is October 31st, and it is often coincides with a very busy period of the year, this deadline remains important to ensure that there is enough time available to distribute community board budget requests to agencies and collect their responses for publication. So in doing so, we feel that delayed submissions are a missed opportunity, a lost chance for boards to share out their quality of life and highlight the ongoing neighborhood issues within the district. We are aware that late submissions may not be collected to OMB and city agencies. This could potentially include them from the preliminary budget. Also, unresponsive community boards may be forwarded to the borough planner of that Pacific Community Board and borough president's office for timely submission. But once again, I would like to thank you and your board for the hard work that goes into these submissions. And if there's any support that the team can offer in relation to the submission timing or ways to improve the process, please let us know. With that being said, I'm going to pass this along to Nick for our look ahead and discussion.
Nick, we can't hear you.
So sorry. Okay. Like I said at the top, in addition to this work that Tash just described that we have going on, we're always looking towards the future. What are ways that we can strengthen this process, that we can respond directly to the feedback we're hearing from our community board partners? And so related to these key pain points that I brought up at the top, we've had several key questions come up as to, how can we take this feedback and turn it into action and make sure that the direction we're moving in is also a direction that the boards feel useful. We definitely don't want to come bring a solution to you all ready-made and packaged only to find out that it's not actually the helpful thing that we thought it was going to be. So some of these important questions that we would love some feedback on today, in addition to any questions you might have, include related to the responses you receive from agencies. What is the most critical information you feel you could get from an agency response? What are sort of the things you definitely want to learn from an agency when they respond to your budget requests? Related to prioritizing your requests, we're very eager to learn more about how the community boards approach developing that priority list and whether there's another way that would make more sense to go about that. And then related to the district need statements themselves, whether you have any specific design improvements that you feel could be made to those reports to make them feel more personalized to your board, since they are, at the end of the day, your product for your district. So on these key questions, some quick things that we've sort of been thinking about to kind of give an idea of where our heads are at. Specifically related to budget request priorities, we've heard from a lot of boards that, because there are so many different budget requests that address so many different needs, it's very difficult to decide, what is more important between affordable housing or youth education, or these very different issues that impact different populations. And so we've heard some folks suggest maybe categorizing or prioritizing their budget requests by agency or by policy area, instead of, or giving each individual request a 1 out of however many priority rankings, something that makes it a little, you don't need to sort of pick winners and losers in terms of what issues you're ranking as high priorities. So we'd love to hear about whether any of those strike any of you as particularly helpful alternatives. And then on the design improvements for the reports, we've heard that some folks, while totally content with the way the reports look now, other folks would rather have a bit more personalization, be able to include and upload some additional information to have throughout the report. Some folks would rather it look a little less like a report DCP produces and a little more like something the board has produced. So really looking for any opportunity to, as we roll out our new submission website, it's also a great opportunity for us to roll out other changes, such as the visual design of the reports. So just to summarize and sort of wrap us up here, thank you all for your attention so far, but would love to field any questions anyone might have, and definitely with the time that we've got, get any feedback you might have about some of these main questions that I just went over, so that as we continue to move on towards this new submission cycle, we can try to affect as much of this improvement as possible. So thank you all again, and happy to take any questions with whatever time we've got.
Sure. Nick and Tosh, thank you very much for the information. If I could trouble you for a PDF of the presentation, I'll make sure it's included in the minutes.
Absolutely.
And
We'll
then,
send along PDF.
Thank you. That's my housekeeping note for the day. Let me open it up to the community boards and the council member offices. Any questions for city planning?
Brooke, I would like to say something.
Sure.
I just want to say the city planning with the city of Yes, the worksheets were very helpful for a big project we sent out to the board members, and we were able to receive a lot of feedback that way. So when we received the worksheets for a huge zoning change, that was very helpful. That's my 2 cents. That's it.
Always great to hear. We'll pass that along. Thank you.
Nick, would it be helpful, is what you're saying, if there were something like a worksheet for this council district needs?
I mean,
That
it
would help
would be
you.
helpful and timelines, like we always get a little confused when our application's got to be submitted. So if that would be a little more forthright, and the worksheets were really, really helpful.
Great. Yeah, no, that's awesome. We're always looking for ways that we can make this easier for the boards to get done. We recognize that it does ask a lot of the boards every year, and so we'll definitely take that on board and look for some ways that we can work that into the flow of things.
Thank you.
Great. CB2, CB3, council member offices, any issues, questions?
I have no questions, no issues. I plan on going on the training again in April 16th, I
Great.
think. Thank you.
Great. Great to hear. And obviously, I understand the open questions to the group does put you on the spot a little bit. But if any of this sparks any ideas later, definitely feel free to reach out. We're always available to chat about whatever you're going through with CD needs.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I'll put both your names, contact information in the minutes as well.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Anything further? Otherwise, we'll say thank you very much to City Planning and move on to our next presentation.
Great. Thanks
Safe
so much,
tra-
everyone.
You
Thank you
bet.
very
Thank you.
much.
Safe
Have a
safe
good day.
travels in this lovely afternoon weather.
You too.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we have the Independent Budget Office. Louisa, you and your team are welcome to take it away. Would you like me to make you the presenter?
I
Can you make
actually, I think
me
if
the
you could make Sarah Parker the presenter, that would
Sarah?
be great. Thank you.
You bet. Coming at you. There you go.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Louisa Chafee. I'm the director of the Independent Budget Office. And just to explain, the Independent Budget Office is, as the name would say, an office of city government that focuses on the budget and is independent. Which means we don't report to the mayoralty or the controller. We were created in the charter revision of 1989, and the idea was that the people needed to have a place to explain how the budget works, the policies embedded in the budget, and what the ramifications of the budget could be, both as the administration put it into place, as the city council responds, and really throughout the year. So as you know, the administration is required to have a budget in the start of the fiscal year. So that's finalized for July 1 or June 30th. It's the last day of the fiscal year. July 1, the next year starts. But there are also fiscal actions in November and January. And the January fiscal action is called the preliminary budget and financial plan. So we're here specifically to talk about what this year's January information showed us. And I want to also explain that the IBO is given access to all city data systems. So we see the same data, for example, that the Office of Management and Budget sees, and any other city agency where we request the data, which means as we look at what the administration is proposing, we use their own data to calculate and calibrate and see whether or not we agree with how they're telling the story. And one more thing before I start, I was just going to ask, I think someone's putting it in the chat, exactly, what is of particular importance to you? But I could see, if you just add it to the chat as we go along, we can either speak to it here or pull out information and email you after the fact. Because with a budget the size of the cities, which is currently somewhere around 207. There are huge questions. Lots of people care about something in their community, very specific, and we're not going to be able to necessarily highlight that in our PowerPoint, but our point is to answer your questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to do the top level, and I'm going to figure out how to get to the chat and start pulling out the questions. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Parker. I'm a Senior Research and Strategy Officer here at the Independent Budget Office, and I'm really happy to be here today. Just to put some sort of context of where we are in the city's budget cycle, the city does 4 quarterly budget updates. This starts in June when a new budget gets adopted. The city's fiscal year begins July 1st and runs through June 30th. Community boards, this is sort of related to what city planning was talking about. They get to submit community district needs and budget requests. That happens in sort of this October period. The first quarterly budget update happens in November, and IBO is required under the city charter to issue a report where we look at the city's fiscal health, we look at the local economy, what we think revenues for the city will be, and then also we look at expenses, and we use that to come up with our own independent estimate of what we think the city's budget gap or surplus will be. And this is how we really sort of come to analyze the fiscal health of the city. We just had in January, as Louisa mentioned, the preliminary budget comes out. This is largely where the mayor will put in new initiatives, put in sort of major changes. And again, IBO under the city charter is required to do an analysis of that budget. We are now where this star is located. We're in between the preliminary budget that comes out in January and the executive budget in April. At the executive budget, we would expect a state budget, although it's late, to be adopted, and therefore we can put any changes that we see in state funding into New York City's budget planning. And also, again, the mayor can add new initiatives, make changes. And this is, again, a place where sort of the budget, we are updating the current year spending and revenues as the year progresses, but we are also making a plan for the next 5 years. And really, with the executive budget, this leads to sort of the home stretch where we're negotiating with city council, who is the other partner in the city sort of budget negotiations. And eventually in June, at the end of June, city council will adopt a new budget, and that will start our new fiscal year. So as I mentioned, IBO looks at sort of where the city's financial picture is from an independent viewpoint of the city's budget. And so we both look at money coming in and money being spent, and we come up with our own estimates of what we think the budget gaps will be. And so in January, based on this analysis, this graph is showing over the current year and then the sort of 5-year window, what we think these gaps will be. So in the current year, IBO is anticipating a larger surplus. So we are bringing in more revenue than we think spending will be in the current year. And then we are anticipating some amount of deficits in the future years. One of the things that you'll hear people talk about when they talk about the budget is this concept of prepayments. The city has to have a balanced budget. And so any extra surplus we see in this year, they use that money to sort of prepay costs we will see and anticipate for next year. So that removes some of this pressure off of future deficit years. IBO is anticipating right now a larger deficit in 2026. This is largely because we are seeing the end of federal COVID aid, and the city has used that to pay for programs that we anticipate the city will continue to have to pay for. Certainly areas in education fit this sort of category. And so there's this question of what are we going to do when federal COVID aid dries up? I mentioned one of the things that the city charter tasks IBO to do is look at the local economic forecast. And so IBO, over the course of last year, continues to estimate what we think job growth will be. This is really central to the ability of the city's economy and health of that sort of economic driver, jobs, income, new development of neighborhoods. And one thing that we really noticed last year is that the mayoral administration, shown here in purple, was anticipating really low job growth relative to IBO, which was very consistent on our expected job growth. We actually landed just about where the year ended. And this was because the mayoral administration was anticipating a recession to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty around high interest rates, and they had built their whole revenue forecast around this idea of high interest rates were going to trigger a recession, and we were going to lose sort of this growth in jobs. And so it was a very pessimistic outlook. Since then, it's becoming more clear that the Federal Reserve has managed to sort of tamp down inflation without triggering this recession. So the administration has revised this estimate going forward. Oh, going the wrong way.
But should we
There
say, Sarah, I think the main or the biggest difference that the IBO found from the administration is there was a lot of talk about the fiscal crisis and the fiscal shortfalls and the general challenges that the city was facing for the upcoming fiscal year. And both the IBO and the City Council found that to not be the case. And in fact, in January, the administration revised their numbers and agreed that it was not the case. So a lot of the budget cuts that were put in place in the fall are being reversed. And while there are some shortfalls in the out years, and so it's not as if, we need to be cautious. But the city is not in the fiscal crisis that the administration implied during the course of the fall. That's my summary of, which is important to know, because as your community centers get cut, it's important to know, are they being cut because there's actually a crisis or for some other reason? Okay, keep going.
So we had this really interesting reversal from the administration. They went from anticipating really low levels of job growth to, in fact, now they're estimating far more jobs than IBO is expecting in future years. Our take on what the local economy is doing is that it will continue to grow and be positive, but that we had a lot of job recovery in reaction to all the job losses we saw during COVID. And so the city has largely regained a lot of those jobs, but we think that growth will sort of taper off. It's not going to be a tremendous growth. It will still be positive, but it won't be very robust, is where our economists landed on their estimates of where jobs are going. And what's interesting about the sort of pandemic and its fallout with New York City, although we've regained sort of the number of jobs that we lost because of the pandemic, certain sectors are still very much struggling, and other sectors are sort of going very strong. So areas that are really struggling still: retail and trade, leisure and hospitality. This is restaurants, hotels, entertainment. And then areas that are doing very strong, we have the finance and insurance, which is a very high paying sector, has done very well and is adding jobs, professional jobs. And then we have this at the bottom. I'd like to highlight healthcare and human services. We have added almost 140,000 jobs since December of since the start of the pandemic. So February 2020 is what we're measuring this against. And largely this is in the home health aid sector. There's been tremendous growth in jobs there. But one of the things is we're seeing a lot of jobs being created, but they're also they're not very high paying jobs overall relative to other industries. So this is something that we're tracking quite closely. And then one thing, just sort of for perspective, we have each of these bars represents a year in the financial plan. And just to show that the bulk of the city's tax revenue comes from property taxes. That is handily the largest driver of this. It's followed by personal income tax and then general sales tax and business taxes. Excuse me. The city's budget, sorry, from the mayor's office, the city's budget is largely, we broke it out by agency just so that people had an idea of where spending was. And it's really interesting that education and then central cost, which is largely fringe benefits and social services, these comprise about 65% of the total expense budget for the city. And that sort of helps put in perspective the size of different agency budgets. This slide here, we're just walking through one of the things that we've heard a lot about is that the city has lost headcount, so city employees have gone down, and we're looking here at the blue, we have hires, and here in the gray we have departures from city service. And the net effect is that we have had a decrease in the number of city employees. This is largely we had people have retired. There has been a hiring freeze. Initially, it was for every 2 people who left, you could have 1 replacement. Then it was sort of a much more sort of entrenched hiring freeze. And some of those restrictions have lifted, but it has had this effect of lowering city employees on sort of payroll. On the one hand, a lot of these jobs have not gone filled, and therefore, if they're sitting on city budgets, this means that there's been savings. We aren't paying salaries that had been budgeted. But the other thing to note is that with a hiring freeze, this wasn't done in a particularly sort of strategic way, looking at agencies and where do we have extra capacity that we could sort of trim capacity through attrition. It was really where did people exit and now you can't replace them. So this has been largely cited as a cause for city services being slower, benefits to be processed slower, and is something that people are really talking about. We look at spending in agencies, and out of that, we do our own re-estimates or repricings of what we think the city's spending will be. One of the areas that often IBO writes about is overtime for the city's uniformed agencies. Police department, fire, sanitation, and corrections are considered uniform agencies. And we have each of those 4 agencies, their overtime budgets at the bottom here, and then this turquoise bar at the top is what IBO thinks additional costs will be. And this is looking at spending to date, and then looking at historic trends, and we have reason to think that next year won't have savings, which the budget currently is much lower for next year than it is this year for these overtime estimates. And then just to highlight one other place that IBO has done a lot of work, we've looked at asylum seekers and compared cost estimates to what the administration had been presenting. In the November plan that they put out, they were estimating that this was going to cost a 2-year total this year and next year of $10.8 billion. And IBO, we looked at actual spending, trends in the population of folks coming in, how long they were staying in New York City, and the administration had announced that they were reducing spending costs per household. And so our estimate came in for the same time period at $6.7 billion. So in November, the administration was thinking almost $11 billion, and IBO estimated it was going to be under $7 billion. That was a $4 billion difference. Since then, in January, the administration reduced their estimate down to $9 billion. So this makes that gap between where IBO thinks we sit and where the administration is a smaller, but still a gap. And then lastly, one other
Sarah,
sort of,
your slides aren't advancing in mine. Are other people still on the uniform services slide?
We
Or
are,
other
but I'm
people's advancing?
looking at the link that you popped in the chat. But Sarah, yes, we're still looking at the uniform
Yeah.
agency slide.
oh no.
So while Sarah figures out the slides, I just want to highlight on the asylum seekers, IBO did a great deal of work in researching exactly the services being provided and the actual cost of services and how these services were being procured, and came up with 3 models because the arrival rate is unpredictable, and saw a far lower amount than the administration had initially anticipated spending. Okay, now I see City FEPS.
Okay, just this is the last thing I want to highlight for the work that IBO does on the spending side. So we looked at the City FHEPS program is a rental assistance voucher program that the city funds. And this is an example of budgeting that we see from the administration that we really want to highlight for folks. So actual spending was over $400 million last year. Looking at who is receiving this benefit and costs, the preliminary budget has over almost $800 million in it for this year, but then wildly has lower amounts, these sort of nominal placeholder amounts starting next year and all of the years in the future. And so this is a place where knowing that these vouchers are valid for 5-year periods, the city, it's unlikely the city is going to pay for issue a voucher in 2024 and then cut the program. So this is an example of places where the budget shows these huge drop-offs in funding, but we have a lot of reason to think that it will remain funded at its current level. So this is a place where IBO highlights we anticipate a lot more spending than what the administration is showing. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and open it up so we can have some discussion.
Louisa and Sarah, thank you so very much. That's a lot to chew through. Thank you for the link that you provided. I'll make sure the PDF is included in the minutes for the board, as well as the one Tana just popped in too for the asylum seeker cost scenarios. Any questions from the board members? Sorry, Debbie?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, Nick, Brianna?
Oh, I'm good.
Antoine?
Thank you. Thank you.
It's taking me back to my college economics classes. So thank you for the graphics and the cogent explanations. It's really quite interesting what y'all do.
Well,
Something? Sorry, go ahead.
Unless a question comes in, what we did want to say is that we do about 60 reports a year. 3 of them are required, and the rest are questions from the public. So if you have a question that you believe could be answered with city data, we need to have access. There needs to be a data set. We need to have access to it. But it's our mission to provide that information, and we are happy to do so. We should say the first asylum seeker cost analysis IBO did because Staten Island elected officials asked, what are the costs for this asylum seeking community arriving. We've since then updated those repeatedly, obviously, as the community has, or the arrivees have increased and changed. But if you have a question, please do write, and maybe Tina will put the press email in. We're happy to help. And it might be a single question, a targeted or a large, but it's our mission to provide information. So we're happy to speak to you, and also, assist in any other way.
Great, thank you. I think I heard this on the radio driving into work a day or two ago, but they were talking about how City Council had also prepared their budget and did some analysis. Is that something you'll be looking at too, in addition to what the city's been providing?
So we're required to look at the administration's work, not the council's response, but we look at what the council is considering because in effect, it's part of the equation. There's a part of the city council called City Council Finance that also very carefully looks at the administration and tries to calculate what they think is actually available in money. And then the council's response is linked to that. So we work really closely with City Council Finance. But our mandated purpose is to provide a counter voice to the administration or another calculation, if you will. That's why in our bar charts, you'll see, our numbers are often really different than what the administration's putting forward because their math is so remarkably either higher or lower than what we're seeing.
Yeah, there's a marked difference in what you were presenting. Okay.
So there's more money for this year, and but we're not, there needs to be fiscal caution, and the economy continues to remain steady. Growth not necessarily in the highest paying sectors, but we continue to be in a relatively steady position, which is, I think, the perhaps most important part, because that allows revenues to come in and the city to have enough money to pay for the services it provides.
It's kind of a fine line question, but the really large increase in jobs in the healthcare sector, is that at the nurse level, at home healthcare, nonprofit?
It's home healthcare aides largely.
Interesting. And that's, agency kind of focused, not necessarily something that might be geared towards, in other words, we have a lot of nonprofits here that do a lot of work with developmental issues and what have you, but it's more towards home healthcare, seniors kind of thing?
It's a lot of senior home healthcare aides is what we're seeing.
Yeah. And we are trying to understand, it's an enormous increase. And so we're understanding or trying to glean more information as to why it's booming on the level it is.
As opposed to the boomers walking into it.
Well, it might be booming because of boomers, right? We do have an aging population, and we also know that, aging in place with some help is, a general goal of aging. And, but still it's a remarkable growth.
Is that citywide, or do you have that broken out by borough?
We do not have it broken out by borough, but we can look into that.
I'd be curious. I will send an email to the the addresses you very kindly listed.
Yeah,
I also think
write you anyway.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Brianna from Councilman Borelli's office, but I also think it's interesting because from our end, sometimes we have constituents call in, and their problem is either finding an aid from the agency, because when they go to the agency, they're saying that there is a shortage of aides. So I find that interesting, actually.
I think if we think about the two actually going hand in hand, there's this huge demand and growth of jobs for it, but you need to find people to fill those jobs, and I think this is sort of the two pieces.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Well, that's great. Any additional questions for the IBO? Wonderful. Well, Louisa, Sarah, Tina, team, thank you so very much. We really appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Brooke. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, team. We'll move next to some of the, as Marie says, the housekeeping items on our agenda. Any correspondence from anyone? Any old business to touch on? Okay. Under new business, we did get a request from CB1 to talk about the two ULURPs that are in place right now currently the Arthur Kill Terminal and the Richmond Valley Road demapping. Nick, the
Yes,
floor is yours if you'd like to
just would like
toss
to,
that up.
yes, Brooke, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, my multiple emails this week, but it's just,
You can email anytime, I promise.
yes, it's an exciting project and Community Board One wholeheartedly embraces this project as Staten Island moves into a more green jobs area, and we wholeheartedly support it. And we would love that to be passed.
Great. What we have now, it was heard at CP3's land use and board meeting last month and approved, and that information was uploaded to the city planning website. It's now in the borough president review phase, which will be for the next 30 days, and that's, I believe, coming up on April 25th is when the information has to be in by. So I do know that the VP did sign a map last month, or excuse me, in February, for a demapping of a small portion of Richmond Valley Road that is affiliated with this ULURP. But aside from that, as soon as we have information from the VP, I'll make sure you get a copy. Jerry, any feedback from your end on CB3? I know there was just a condition that they wanted the applicants to work with the Pine Oak Woods folks to find an appropriate mitigation site on Staten Island. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I would just like to add that they gave a presentation, a lengthy presentation. They answered all our questions. And the board voted unanimously to approve this project to be established in Tottenville area of Staten Island. There, of course, are always people who have concerns about a big project like this. It was felt that it's far better to have that than the mall that they were originally going to build there.
Yeah.
Which would have added thousands of cars to a one-lane strip of road that is underwater half the time, and especially today.
Yeah.
So many alternatives have been looked at for that site, and this will bring tremendous jobs and to the area. And by bringing workers to the area, you will have people spending money in the shops, the stores, the restaurants, the delis, and everything along that area. So we overwhelmingly support it, and we think it's an excellent idea.
I'll include the two websites in the minutes, but the arthurkillterminal.com site in particular has some more details on what they're doing. The thing I thought was a nice add was the restoration of the coal house and sort of turning that into a visitor center about, the wind project and what's going on. They seem to be thinking of not only the site and its uses, but also reaching out to the community and engaging that as well, which I thought was good. The jobs certainly should have a tremendous impact as well.
Yes.
Okay.
They also made it clear that they're going to be union jobs.
Yes.
And that's significant as well. And we asked them about their hours of work and operation and noise levels and all the concerns that a community would have. And they were quite responsive and cooperative in dealing with our concerns.
Oh, I'm glad to hear. Okay. Well, Nick, anything else that you had for that?
Good, so we'll wait for the borough president, but hopefully next month we can vote on that.
We should have hopefully that within 2 or 3 weeks. Okay.
Thank you, Brooke.
You bet.
Thank you, Community Board 3.
All right. Is there anything else anyone needs or wants to discuss? Good. Well, then could I entertain a motion to adjourn today's meeting, please? Jerry? And could I get a second? Nick? Great. Thank you all very much. Hope you are safe and dry heading home. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you, guys. Take
Take care.
Thank you so much.